Thank you.
And Daniel, what agency are you from?
Silver Eye.
Excellent. And you're looking to enter a few?
Yeah. Probably 3 or 4 categories.
Excellent. And Chris, where are you from?
Yeah, so we're from Strategy Creative, based nationwide, but we're in the Christchurch studio.
Awesome. Right. Well, this is going to be a very intimate training session today, given that typical PR people have not turned up after accepting. So we might as well get started, James?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone that's shown up. We will share the slides at the end. So for those that haven't seen it, and we'll record it, we'll pass it through. But yeah, thanks for coming to our first ever Pressie writing workshop. We're now in our 5th year of the awards, and this year we've introduced 2 new categories. We've got the diversity, equity and inclusion category and the non-for-profit, as well as 2 new sponsors, Stuff and RadLab this year, which is great. And we've got our thank you to our existing sponsors, NZME and Meta. Thank you to our wonderful committee, Gina, Katie, Adele, Kelly, Angelina, and of course this year's convener, Catherine Broughton. This morning, the wonderful Sean Brown from Mango has prepared the workshop to help you make your entry writing experience a breeze. If you have questions, Sean's advised, feel free to jump in at any point. However, if you prefer, you can leave questions in the chat section and we'll do a roundup in the end. Without any further ado, over to you, Sean.
Right, and obviously because we're a lean team today, please just ask questions at any time. You guys need to get the most out of this session. So yeah, ask away. Any specifics that you guys are thinking of with the awards that you want to enter, please, speak up or put some comments in the chat and James can feed them through to me. Let's crack off. So just very quickly, what we'll cover off today, just a little bit about the Pressie Awards and why you should enter. We're going to evaluate what to enter is really important. We'll talk about how to draft your entries and tips and tricks there. Then we'll go through the sections and the categories to make sure that you guys understand the best place to present your work and just some final bits of advice. I'm not going to bore you to death with too much PowerPoint. There's only about half a dozen slides here. So yeah, please just ask up. And hi, Felicity, who joined us. Please ask away. So just quickly on the Pressie Awards, so James said that it's our 5th year, which is great. So we're seeing the quality of the entries get better and better each year, which is fantastic. PR or Pres agencies, typically very busy, which is why a few have dropped off the call today. But it's not like we have big planning teams to write these entries. So it's sessions like this and making sure that we are starting the process early to make sure that the quality of the entry is really good is key. It's all about recognising the best PR, experiential and social media work in New Zealand. And winning the awards do make a difference. I know that typically kind of PR, experiential and social agencies or in-house people have left the awards for the creative agencies, but we do find, especially at Mango, that clients especially are really seeing the benefits of winning the awards for that internal buy-in and the internal celebration as well. So it's great that you guys are keen to enter. Agency and client judges. So there's about 50 judges this year. They are a mixture of senior PR, experiential and social agency consultants and in-house as well. So it's really important for you guys to understand who's going to be reading these entries as well. So they are the specialists in this field. And just quickly, the deadline is the 18th of October. So we've got about a month to go and that goes really quickly. So one of the advice is to crack on if you guys haven't already, and the award ceremony will be on the 24th of November in Auckland, and it should be a pretty jazzy affair. So put that in your diary. Right, so that's just a little bit about the Pressie Awards. So let's kick in to talking about what to enter. So this is obviously really important. The evaluation dates is work essentially that has been live in the last 12 months. So I suggest starting with a long list. So however you record all of your work in the last 12 months, whether it's going through your financials, your open jobs, I would suggest going through all of the work that you've done in the last 12 months and identifying the long list of potential campaigns or work to enter. Your long list might be 2, it might be a dozen, but at least you've got the platform of possible work that you can start evaluating about whether or not it's strong enough to enter. Once you've got the list of possible work to enter in the last 12 months, the key step really here is the critical evaluation of that work. So the Pressies is based on work that is PR, experiential, or social led. So that's really important. So it might be an amazing above the line creative that you've helped out with a small amount of PR. That's probably not going to cut it. It really needs to be led, the work needs to be led by PR, experiential, or social. So that's the first critical piece of evaluation. The next one is around creativity. So, we're busy professionals. We deliver, what I like to think is, great results for our clients, or if you're in-house regularly. This awards ceremony is not about celebrating the really good BAU campaigns that we do on a regular basis. So you might have launched an NPD, you've achieved huge amounts of PR coverage, smashed your KPIs, but it was kind of a BAU campaign and didn't really have any creativity. So making sure that there is some degree of difficulty and a creative lens on it and an idea behind it, whether or not that's a strategic idea or a traditional creative idea. It really needs to be beyond just that BAU, really good everyday work that we do for our clients. And then the results are obviously really important as well. So even in some of the categories where it's quite specific around, best media relations, obviously we will have the results of the media coverage, but just see if there's something else there that will really show why it worked. So whether or not it is internal feedback, whether or not it's quotes from customers, whether or not there's a sales spike, really making sure that you can prove that the campaign worked is really vital to that as well. So once you've done that first kind of critical evaluation to make sure that you've got some campaigns that are led by Pres, that are creative, there's a degree of difficulty, and you've got some really good results, then the next step is just to quickly check that the client's okay with you entering. A simple step, but quite often that's not done to the last minute and the client is not keen to enter for some reason. So that's a tick box that you have to do. And then it's about selecting the right category or categories. So the Pressie Awards are designed for Pres agencies that may not typically have as large awards budgets as some of the big brand agencies. So they are, in the scheme of things, reasonably low in cost. And so it would make sense if you're investing a lot of time into the category, into writing the entries, that you try and choose multiple categories if relevant. And I'll speak to the categories in a couple of slides, but yeah, selecting the right category and reading the description from the judges around what they're looking for is really key as well. And just some admin, make sure you read the detail around the dates, the word count, and the assets required. So word count this year has increased to 1,600 words. So we've got a little bit more room in there, but that doesn't mean that you have to fill all 1,600 words as well. And then, yeah, make sure that you look through things like it needs to be agency blind. So remove any mention or logo of your agency or any agencies who have helped, and then start to work out what the pieces of supporting materials that you're going to enter. Make a plan and allow for approvals and start now. So it's 4 weeks away and that goes really quickly. It is always down to the wire. So I can't stress enough just to start that process now. And welcome to, I've got a couple of new joiners. Just please ask questions as we go. Any questions on evaluating the work? I'll kick on unless there is. So drafting the entries. So obviously the results and proving that the work actually worked is the most important piece. So in terms of timelines and next steps, make sure that you are asking your clients, any other agencies involved, if there's a separate social agency, above the line agency, clients, ask them for that data now. A type of proof or evidence that your campaign worked. So if you can get your hands on any brand lift data, sales data, sentiment, any research, all that stuff is really gold to really proving the worth of the work that you've done. The next one is really important as well. The judges are reading a lot of these entries, and some of them are pretty bloody boring. And they shouldn't be. So when, speaking to the typical PR people, if you're, and actually social as well, we need to tell a story and we need to provide a hook and interest to the audience. It's the same for judges. So the awards should tell a story. This is not a post-campaign report. We just don't want to know that you sent out a press release and got 12 pieces of coverage, or if you did a social campaign that reached 1.2 million people and had 10,000 likes. You really need to tell the story. So bring us on a journey and make sure that it's interesting to read. So humor is fine. Rhetorical questions are fine. Really make it kind of conversational and take us on that journey as well. Plot your story first with an outline. So we'll talk through the entry form shortly, but there's about a dozen sections in the entry form. So I suggest that you actually plot with bullet points, however you want to do it. Plot your story throughout the sections. Make sure you've got the right data, the right insights in each section before you really dive into the detail. I've seen, especially some of the juniors attempting their first draft, and they just go straight into the writing, and it's a really dense, over word count document that's hard to edit. I'd much like planning content, start with plotting an outline to make sure that you've got the right information. And again, that's another test to see if your award entry is strong enough as you start going through those sections. Sell the sizzle and make it interesting. So this is not for BAU, as mentioned before. This is not about celebrating really good, solid campaigns that we do regularly for our clients. This is about celebrating the work that is special in some way. So really make sure that you're dialing up what is special about that work. And again, just not standard BAU. And knowing your audience. So you are, the judges are PR, experiential and social professionals, or senior comms or marketing clients. So they know what you're talking about. They can smell the bullshit a mile away. So lean in and address that cynicism. So as an example, again, I'll use media relations. If you only generated one 6 p.m. news story, that could be enough if you actually explain why that was so hard. So explain why that was such a big win and why that was, an award-winning campaign because of that. So really lean in and address the cynicism. So that's quite useful to use rhetorical questions as well. So, it's fine if you say, you may think that one story in the 6 o'clock news doesn't sound that great. However, knowing the background about why that is so difficult and why that is such a coup is really why this is such an award-winning idea. So really making the judges not work for the answers, explain the why as well as the what. Make sure that's logical, easy to read, not too long. So I mentioned before that the word count has gone up to 1,600 from 1,200, just to give people a bit more freedom in each of the sections. That doesn't mean that you have to go to the word count in each section. Short, snappy bits of content work on social, short press releases work. So short, snappy award entries should work as well. And finally, test it. So test it with someone who hasn't been working on the account. Make sure that it is sounding like an award-winning entry, not just a great piece of work, and read it out loud, all those standard things there as well. Any questions around drafting your entries? I'll speak through the sections and some tips on each of the sections shortly. Does that all make sense? I will assume so. Kick on. So the right categories. As you can see, there are a ton of categories in the Pressie Awards, and we've got two new ones this year, which James mentioned, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what was the other one? Non-profit as well. So especially the Silver Eye guys and strategy team, did you guys have any particular questions around some of the categories that you're looking to enter?
Yeah, we're looking at the PR category.
Yep.
And maybe experiential as well.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I guess the media relations in particular, that is a fairly, I guess, popular category. So it is making sure that you are really talking about why your campaign was, more than that kind of BAU, get good coverage for a launch of something, as an example. So I would spend more time in media relations talking about the insights and the challenge of it, more than some of the other categories as well, to make sure that you're really communicating that there is a degree of difficulty, because again, you're talking to PR professionals who might just say you just sent out a press release and got some coverage. So that one is talking about why that was so hard and why the strategy around how you did that was so important and delivered the results. Around experiential event as well, it's setting up the audience insights. It's talking to why the work that you did resonated so well with those who you are directly engaging with, and I'd really dial up the supporting channels that you used around experiential as well. So making sure that you're talking about the social results of the PR or the word of mouth and how you measured that, not just the one-on-one interactions from the experiential campaign. A couple of the other ones in here, which sometimes we have a bit of issues with or pushback on. The first one would be the influencer marketing campaign entry. We've had some confusion over the years with people entering campaigns where they have used, I guess, well-known people as talent in ads, but haven't really activated them as influencers and targeting their own audiences. So I would, if any of you guys are looking into that, I'd make that clarification around using them to actually influence their own networks. And primarily that's their social network, but it also could be their in real life network as well. So making that differentiation is really key on that one, that it's not just talent and ads, we're using those influencers to influence their audience. So that's a key kind of differentiator on that one. And then the other one would be social media. So again, you're speaking to senior PR marketers and in-house people. They know all the tricks of the trade. So the watch out for the social media category would be around the results and actually explaining them in detail. So some of the global creative campaigns, you see the results and it's 12.5 million opportunities to see, or a total impression of 12 billion across the world. For this particular audience, I would make sure that you dive into the detail and really kind of pick apart the results for social media in particular. So it's not just total reach, total likes, actually give some context to that and dive into that next level of detail in terms of the data and the analytics around social media as well. Any other questions on any of those categories in particular?
Oh yeah, just one around the most innovative campaign.
Yep.
Is that innovative in terms of the way you use, say, PR or experiential, or is it more in what's the kind of context around that?
Yeah, so I guess the description is that it's any campaigns that essentially pave new ground, used emerging technologies, methods, or ideas. So or disruptive thinking. I guess that one there is less around, a really ballsy, brave, creative idea, and more around an innovative way of delivering it. So if you used, TikTok in a completely new way for your campaign, or if you, hijacked an event and turned it into, something else, it would be, I'd say probably the easiest way would be looking at an innovative way of delivering it rather than the creative idea.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd say.
Sean, have you got any sort of thoughts or tips on bravest client?
Yes. I mean, they actually have to be brave. So they have to have done something that was risky, I guess. So, we've seen some entries where people have said, this client had never done something like this before and had to convince the CEO that it was the right thing to do. Not that brave. But if it was, they were willing to put up, to risk the entire marketing budget to really make, to give this a shot, then that's obviously something that's, a little bit more interesting. But again, with that one, it's making sure that you explain the context. So even if it was putting 100 grand of the budget at risk, the context might be that that is 90% of the annual marketing budget, and therefore huge bravery. But without that context, we might think, oh, the 100 grand out of a $3 million marketing budget's not that brave. So context is really, really important for that one, because bravery is different for each of the clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Any of the other ones? I would say diversity, equity, and inclusion, given it's a new category this year, lots of brands are doing something in that space, but a lot of brands are doing kind of the hygiene layer in that space. So, if one of your clients or agencies, sponsored an LGBTQ awards ceremony and sent out a press release, probably not an award-winning example of that. But if you really did something that actually made a difference to one of those audiences and did something really unique, then that's the type of work that you should be considering entering in that one. Public affairs or stakeholder management. I'm not sure if we've got many kind of the corporate agencies on the line, but that one there is probably one of the trickier ones to enter. But it's one where we should be trying to celebrate the work that we do, being, given that lots of us are, brand reputation guardians. But writing an award about how you kept the client out of the newspaper, as an example, is probably trickier to write, but that one there has lots of potential. So it's not a well-entered category. So if you've got any campaigns in that public affairs area, or if you lobbied government to change a law, anything like that, I'd consider entering it into that category there as well. Same with community management impact. That's probably one of the categories with a fewer entries as well. Top tips here. So that one there is, again, influencing any particular group or community. So that could be internal comms. I know that we're doing more and more of that, and it's really important. So making sure that you're considering your internal comms campaigns into that community management impact award is key as well. Any other questions on those?
If you feel like a campaign could be entered into, say, like 3 or 4 of those categories, is it best to really sort of silo into 1 or 2?
I mean, you enter as many as you think is appropriate, but I would just say make sure that you tweak the entry for each particular entry form. So largely the entry forms are fairly similar, but there's different weightings on each of the sections, and there's a few different sections in each of them. But absolutely, I mean, if you've got a big integrated campaign, obviously do that one there. You might have had a bravest client who bought the campaign, and then there may have been a significant media relations aspect of that campaign as well. So absolutely, there's plenty of ways to enter more than one category, and obviously that's the most efficient use of your time as well, with the amount of effort that goes into drafting them.
Cool, thanks.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, we can come back to that if we need to. But the next one, I'll just take you through one of the entry forms. So they do change for each entry form. I think this one's a media relations one, but generally the sections are similar with slightly different weighting, and some of the categories have some slightly specific sections in here. But just this is some tips and tricks of what should be in each of the sections. So first one, entry summary, that's typically 0 points on that one there, but this is the way, this is a synopsis to when you start reading a book. This is a way to give judges a really good indication of what they're about to read, so they've got context and they can understand it a bit more. So understand your headline, understand your angle of what you're selling us, but leave the entry summary till last to write, because you'll need to incorporate all of the crafting that you've done throughout the document. So I'd wait for last to really work on that entry summary, but make sure that you sell the sizzle and you're explaining the why this entry is so award-winning. So really dial up the challenge, the difficulty, and the results in this one. So really kind of, make it grunty, make it interesting, and ensure that it's just not listing what you did in the entry summary. The challenge, so this is where you put your objectives, and make sure that they are smart objectives, because this directly correlates to the results section at the end. So these two need to match. We're relevant, but I would also always advocate you have business and comms objectives, so you can separate those out, and obviously KPIs to measure the success. So and again, as part of making this easy to read for judges, it's absolutely fine to just have bullet points in here, and it doesn't need to be exhaustive. But I would make sure that the objective is more than just, we needed to hand out 1,000 samples, or we needed to get one story on the 6 o'clock news. Make sure that there's a bit more meat on the bones there, so we can really judge the evidence and whether or not the campaign worked or not. Insights, 15%. So these are really key, and this is where you put all of your thinking to inform what you did. So if you've got any research, and this could be brand research or formal research from clients, but this could also be desk research and social media research. So it could be around, you've seen, sentiment about a particular product or a brand. It could be competitor analysis. It could be macroeconomic conditions. This is all of your thinking around that informed why you did what you did. It could be, any insights that you've gathered around audiences, the demographics, what they like, what they don't like about your brand or competitors or the industry that you're playing in. Really kind of dial that up. And this is often where you can portray the difficulty factor of the work that you did. So again, you can say, the target audience is 20-year-old males. We know that they don't read the newspaper, they don't do all of the stuff, and they generally hate our brand, which is why we had to do something revolutionary, and we had to engage with them in a completely different way, as an example. So make sure that you're really dialing up that degree of difficulty in this insight session, because that is the lead into the creative reveal, which is the next one, which is the solution. And this is where you really need to sell the sizzle. If your campaign doesn't have, a name, a project name, I would suggest giving it one here. So rather than a big reveal as we did a media conference to announce something, the big reveal is actually, the largest, most innovative press conference the country has ever seen. Make sure that you're selling the sizzle, making sure that you tell the judges, in one sentence, one paragraph, what was so kind of creative or strategic about what you do. And this one here, it doesn't need to be lengthy. This could literally just be one sentence, the name of your project and what you did. Next section is implementation. So obviously this is, I guess, probably the, in some ways, the easiest section to complete. This is what you did. This is a list of tactics. of what you did. I would say that this is the largest word count category section of the entry form with 400 words. So make sure that it's easy to read. So again, bullet points are totally fine. Subheadlines, underline key things, make it easy to read. So I'd suggest sorting it by channel or by date, something really logical so we can see again what you did really quickly. And I would make sure that again you're not you're making sure that this seems more than BAU. So one of your tactics might be we distributed a press release. How can you actually dial that up a little bit more and explain why that was different than BAU. The spend, so this one here, there are some options. You don't need to actually list that it was 87,250. You can just select one of those options there, but add in some explanation if required. So if it is over 100,000, but it was just over 100,000, you might want to state that. If it was under 15K, you might want to actually state that agency time was gifted if it was a nonprofit, as an example. So a bit of context there is really good, because again, you're talking to cynical PR, comms and marketers who will be picking apart all the stuff, and you don't want them to be saying, like, as if they did that for 15 grand, like what a crock. They obviously got a whole bunch of free media. So this is your opportunity to actually explain and give context to what that spend was. And the results, obviously very, very important. So that's 30% of the entry. That's the biggest chunk. I think with the exception of possibly the best strategic thinking might have the weighting in another category, but for the most part, this is where you want to prove what you did. This is so many entries that we've read before. This results section hasn't married up at all with the objectives up the front. So I would suggest you literally copy and paste your objectives into the section and then add the results alongside the objectives. So don't leave any objective unanswered. And if there is an objective that you didn't meet, it's absolutely fine to say, we smashed all of these. However, we only achieved 80% of this KPI because of this and this. So making sure that you're answering all of the objectives is really important, and give context. So what else was in market? Lots of these campaigns we would have seen individually out in the market. So we will know if there is a massive TVC campaign that supported your PR campaign, or we know there is also a huge sponsorship of the All Blacks or something like that that went alongside your small campaign. So this is where you can actually list what else was in market and actually acknowledge that. So be specific and don't bullshit. So, I mentioned before, just kind of the fluffy results around 20 million impressions or opportunities to see. Try and actually give better context for that, rather than just those big fluffy results, because we actually want to know and understand if it worked. The results here as well, obviously, it's important to have the specific comms results of what you did. So the number of media stories you generated, all of your social results as an example. But here you can also add in some of the softer measures as well. So you can put in a quote from the client that said, this is the biggest upshift in something or other that we've done in 2 years, or we've been trying for 5 years and we finally got this across the line. You can add in some comments or some sentiment from social media. This is where you can, really sell that it worked and really show why this campaign deserves to be an award winner. And lastly, there's one section called the hype factor. So it's only worth 10%, but this is the last thing that the judges will read. So this is your opportunity to basically prove your case about why the award should win. So this is around context. Why was it so hard? Why was it so innovative? And this you can grab a little nugget from one of the other sections and really explain that even more. So this is your kind of lasting sell the sizzle before the judge turns the paper and reads the next entry. and it's only 100 words. So I'd pick kind of one thing and really sell the sizzle and talk about one particular thing that and shows why it's an award-winning entry. Right. Any questions on any of these sections from anyone?
Hey, I know with a couple of other, I think it might have been the FEs, we needed to include spreadsheets and kind of, I guess proof of the results that we're stating. Is that part of this entry?
So you, and James, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can put some graphs and basic kind of charts into the entry itself, but it's way less kind of data driven than an FE's.
Cool.
But one of you're allowed 5 pieces of supporting campaign material. So one of them could be some data if you wanted to show it. But typically, these entries are much lower word count than in an FE's. I think FE's is like 2,500.
A lot.
Yeah, this has gone from 1,200 to 1,600. So there is a bit more room. Yeah, it's definitely not the same requirements of data than an FE's would, because that's obviously purely about effectiveness. This is about the creativity, the context, and the results as well.
And then I may be jumping ahead here. Things like say case study videos or hype reels, are they allowed within this context?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. So again, 5 supporting materials. If you've got a video, that's clearly the best thing to add. Just make sure that it's agency blind. But yeah, hype reels are definitely something that you should be striving forward to enter. But if you don't have them, it could be one piece of news coverage that you upload as a video. It could be a compilation of coverage. It could be a PDF of news coverage, or it could be a graph showing spikes in sales results or brand uplift. It can be basically whatever you want to support the results.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Cool. Any other questions from anyone else? I think with these ones here, going back to my earlier point about plotting your entry, I think is really important. So how I do it is I just put bullet points of the key pieces in each of those categories before I actually add meat to the bones. I think it's really important to have that flow and make sure that you're telling a story and that each section flows on to the other one really well as well. If you dive into it too much, and I've seen it with some juniors, they diving into the detail, they quite often put things into the wrong sections because they haven't thought about that flow. So on this page, making sure that the insights really are the lead into the crescendo of what that big reveal is. So making sure that you're telling a story and it flows right throughout is really key. And then just some final bits of advice is make it interesting to read. So humor is fine, rhetorical questions are absolutely fine. There's no reason to be dull, and it shouldn't be dull. Each of the judges are probably reading at least 20, sometimes 30 entries. So making sure that your one stands out is really important. And give context to your selling points. So the why, not just the what. So why was that activation so successful? Why was it so difficult? Why was it so creative? Is just as important as, yes, it worked and it delivered what we wanted it to do. Remember your audience. So the people reading it are, typical cynical PR and marketers. So they know your tricks as well. So again, with those kind of big soft results, it delivered, 20 billion opportunities to see. It's not really telling us much, especially with things like the social category. You can effectively buy results and reach now. So unpicking that and explaining, why what you did was so interesting. Same with things like activations. If you're doing a retail sampling campaign and your KPI was to hand out 10,000 free ice creams, again, doesn't sound particularly hard until you give the context around why that was so logistically difficult, why it was so hard to engage with the target audience, and why you did it in a unique location or in a unique way. So really giving context to the stuff that you've done is really important. If I look at the new entry category as well, especially with diversity, equity, and inclusion, context around that one is really key as well. So it's making sure that you're not just doing tick box, hygiene layer campaigns, that you're actually explaining why what you did worked so well, why it was so difficult, why it was so creative or innovative. So really dialing that up as well. Results that relate to the objectives. So please just grab your objectives, put them in a results section, and just make sure that they're answered. So I actually like to keep that same format in both sections and literally copy it over and have, exceeded, met, smashed, whatever the adjective is, but making sure that they really, really closely relate to each other. Is really, really key, and that there is some detail in the results that you're giving, some context, but making sure that there's some soft results, some hard results, and really proving that what you did worked, not just it was something good and we got some positive PR coverage. Why was that so important, and what did that do for the brand of the business? And admin, spell check, word count, and get the right assets ready to go. And lastly, start now and keep crafting it. It will take longer than you think. So really start that journey now if you haven't. It's really, from a judge's perspective, it's really obvious when someone has rushed the entry and just whipped something in at the last kind of day. So making sure that you've got the time to craft your entry so it really flows is really important. And any other questions from anyone? Anything about the categories? No, all good. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for your time. We will share this around, and happy for you guys to flick me a note as well if you guys have got any specifics, particularly around any of the categories and what judges are looking for. More than happy for you guys to flick me a note to clarify that afterwards.
Sean, sorry, one quick question. Are the sort of, in terms of the actual awarding, and is it still gold, silver, 80 or over 80 is it over 80 or over 90 is gold, and sort of over 70 to 80 is silver or something?
Yeah, it's usually 70 to 80 is silver, and 80 plus is gold. James, has that changed this year? I think that would be the same as last year. That would
No, I think it's the same as it has been previously.
Gold. Yeah, so yeah, you want to be over 80 to get any medal, and then the Grand Prix is chosen by the executive judges as well, and announced on the night, and it's usually one of the gold winners from each of the other categories.
Does that mean that some years there aren't golds?
Yep.
Okay, that's quite.
Yep.
That's quite
yeah, and some years, I mean, there will be some categories where there are not any award winners this year. Like, especially some of the more kind of niche ones like public affairs and stakeholder management, best community management. Sometimes, they're not well entered categories. They're quite niche. So yeah, absolutely, there may not be any winners in some of the categories.
Yeah, it feels like there's more value in that, than just giving out awards. Oh, yeah, I think that's good to hear. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and again, like the people scrutinizing it, cynical PR people. Yeah, and I guess when I'm judging them, whether or not they're a gold or not is if I'm envious and I wish that I had done it, is a good sign for me. Like I was like, oh, piss, I wish I sold that into one of my clients, or I wish I did that. It was really, really like an amazing campaign. So that's what you should be aiming for. And that's kind of, my test to see if they're a gold winner or not as well.
Sean, I guess the flip of what you're saying there, though, like you've got categories that aren't very well entered versus categories. So media relations, I imagine, attracts a lot of entries. Do you try and limit the number of sort of gold and silver you that can win in a category that's really oversubscribed, or
no?
For instance, could 10 entries all win gold?
Yep, absolutely. Like, and yeah, I mean, media relations is probably one of the more popular ones, and I think maybe last year, the year before, we might have had 4 golds in that category, or a couple of golds and 3 silvers. So absolutely, it doesn't. Yeah, don't let that put you off entering each of the categories. We can have 5 golds in one category if they are all worthy of golds.
So is it more like a piece of work is judged against itself, or is it judged against another piece? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess it has to stand on its own.
Yeah.
So it needs to be written, on the assumption that there's no other entries in that category, and it needs to be judged on its own. But of course, it will be compared to other entries as well. We typically do that to make sure we've got the right balance of golds and silvers in each category. And if we have, the points and the scoring tell us that at the executive judging time we've got 5 golds, they all need to be of the same quality, and it might be that one of them is over and above, so that might be a gold and the other one's dropped to silver. So I guess to answer your question, yes to both of them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any more questions from anyone? No, you've done a great job, Sean. So thank you so much, Sean, for taking us through that. I think it was really valuable to everyone that was here, and I will share the recording this afternoon with you and any other colleagues that weren't able to make it this morning. So thank you once again for coming along, and we look forward to receiving your entries and seeing you on the evening.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Yeah, and flick through any other questions that you have. Thank you. Cheers.